us to go live? Okay, guys, we are live. The business-to-business buying process typically is a highly emotional one that lends itself to irrational behaviors, also quick methods of coming to a solution that are, at best, educated guesses. The emotion that most impacts the B2B buyer is fear. Fear of things like loss of professional credibility, job security, monetary loss, etc. As inside salespeople selling in the business-to-business sector, we must do our best to minimize this fear by eliminating risk, which can be done by building trust with prospects. Most of the time, this type of personal risk, it's often unstated, and it's different for each person in the buying cycle or your buying committee, which sometimes you will have a credit manager who needs to get approval from a CFO and a controller to place accounts with us, and we need to make sure that each one of these people have faith and trust in our agency. A lot of qualified leads will disappear on us because of anticipated risk, and this happens when we don't acknowledge and tackle those fears, and what happens is, well, revenue suffers. Business buyers are people, they're not faceless companies, and a lot of times rational decisions can get clouded by emotions, motivations, desires, and what we need to do is listen to what our prospects and potential clients need, paying attention to the emotional needs and the cues of our prospects. We also need to provide sufficient amounts of relevant information to help guide and educate them during the placement process, as well as the ongoing business development process. We can do this by leveraging educational sales calls to help build trust and ongoing relationships with our prospects, and of course by making the best use of our CRM system to be able to stay in touch with these potential clients. This is going to help you to get not only what we're worth as a company, but it will help you to get what you're worth as a sales professional. You also want to leverage your strengths and your experience. When you're speaking with a prospect, it's imperative to feature our company's strengths and why we are better than the alternative agencies out there. And you have to be ready to do so with confidence in how our firm stands out from other agencies. You also need to have the desire to sell. To be great at sales, you must want to sell. The best salespeople love it. They love to sell. It's evident to everyone around them, especially their customers. Now, on the other hand, there are salespeople who sell simply because it serves a purpose, and they're in some sort of career transition. The point is, people know when you don't love what you do, and you have to ask yourself, do you love to sell? Having a passion to sell is an important part of being a salesperson. You have to be passionate about your work. You must feel strongly about it to be successful. You can have the innate desire to sell, but not the passion. Passion is genuine enthusiasm that drives your desire. Passion is visible, and it is seen and felt by colleagues, prospects, and clients. And in my eyes, lack of passion is a lack of interest in earning business. Additionally, you want to have the energy to sell. When sales are lacking or your leads aren't producing, do you have the energy to continue? Now, it's not definitive that a high energy level will guarantee sales success, but what we do know is that a low energy level will not lead to success. High energy means that you bring the right energy and intensity to work with you, and you instill it in those around you, which brings me to self-motivation. Every great salesperson that I am personally acquainted with is self-motivated. They make things happen proactively. They handle obstacles proactively while they keep pressing forward toward the goal. There is no other way to be successful. And of course, you must always know what actually motivates you. There may not be one right answer, but knowing what drives you is important to create success. If you know why you're in sales, you become energetic, you become passionate, and you begin to display other characteristics of a good salesperson. When you're passionate about yourself, you extend that passion to your work. The last point the last point I'm going to make on that is integrity. The best sales professionals are honest. They're punctual, dependable, reliable, respectful, and caring.
Thanks. All right.
It's important to always make sure you do what you say and say what you do. When you do that, when you're completely honest with your customers, you get a chance to build credibility towards sales success. And that's what this is about. So in this forum, we're going to talk about some of the things we can do to build credibility in us and how to sell service over price through knowledge. About a third of the prospects that you attempt to sell will be hung up on price. Therefore, it's important to understand your product and why it is better than the lower priced alternatives out there. First and foremost, our private investigator network. We have the ability to assign a private investigator in the debtor's specific locale to investigate the debtor, to investigate the debtor's business, and to personally visit that company that owes our client the money. The PI will gather information and game plan with a collector prior to confronting the debtor at their place of business. And of course, when they do confront the debtor company, the place of business, that's going to be, of course, an attempt to achieve a resolution of the delinquent account. This is part of the service that is automatic when we write an account for a client. This is what our collectors do. This is what we're known for. Another thing is investigation before negotiation. Most of the alternative agencies do little or no investigative work, and therefore they approach debtor companies blind. And if they run into a situation where a company offers to pay monthly payments, they accept it immediately. If a company refuses to pay or ignores their demands, they either cancel the file or recommend suit. And by doing this, they are leaving a ton of money on the table. Here, we firmly believe that information is the key to better and faster results. We gather information to create a financial profile on a debtor company in order to make an intelligent decision on how to approach the debtor. We don't want to back off of a debtor who has the money and the means to pay the balance in full, nor do we want to push a company for the balance when they don't have the capacity to pay us. In a nutshell, good up-to-date information allows us to credibly push a company to pay more, faster, and on the flip side of that, if they are in a situation where they can't pay, we have the means to justify to a client why they should take less, either a settlement or a payment plan. Additionally, in our arsenal, we have experienced commercial collection attorneys all over the country to handle our clients' needs. We retain attorneys that are located in the debtor's area to employ tools like attorney demands. This is something that's important when we have a collector and a private investigator hammering a company. We throw one of our lawyers into the mix too. And this is part of our collection process. You know, we're not just a phone call and letter generation shop. We do what needs to be done to get the client's money. Within 24 hours of assignment, the collection procedure begins. Typically, a debtor is contacted by a licensed, bonded, credit-trained private investigator, which that investigator will inform the debtor that an asset and liability investigation is underway against the debtor company, at which point the investigator will proceed to ask questions designed to gather information helpful in determining the financial condition of the debtor, and also to put that debtor, that company, the owner or whatever player in that company is handling the communication, to put them on edge, to make them uncomfortable. Look, this is what's happening right now. We're not threatening. We're not harassing. We're not doing these other things that other agencies do. We're going in there and we're getting the job done. We're doing the work. Okay? And this information will also confirm whether there's an inability to pay us or an unwillingness to pay. At that point, the debtor is typically informed that other vendors that they do business with, bankers, trade references, may also be contacted to gather more information pertinent to the case. And our investigators do interview other people that debtor company does business with. Vendors, bankers, trade references, things of that nature. And of course, the purpose of this is, one, to gather information and confirm information, but also to get the attention of the debtor. Generally, when a private detective or a private investigator contacts a debtor, either by phone or in person, he's going to give them the contact information for the collector that's in charge of the file. In our experience, when we do this, 90% of the time, the debtor will call the collector immediately following the initial investigative contact. 90% of the time. Unlike conventional agencies that will hound a debtor with phone calls and letters, we find ways to make our debtors call us. Now, of course, we have to make phone calls to them too. But when we're doing this, we're creating a captive audience. And more importantly, we're creating leverage. While we have the debtor's full attention, the collection executive will discuss resolution of the debt. If this prompts the debtor to immediately send full payment, the investigation ceases. If the debtor makes no valid proposal to satisfy the debt, the collection executive will continue the investigation. And at this juncture, the debtor's bank, vendors, trade references are all going to be contacted to gather and confirm more information. Now, when an investigator is dispatched to a debtor's place of business, these guys go out, they take photos of assets, they meet with the debtor personally, they question employees. Their job is to get under someone's skin. And once all the information has been gathered and analyzed, our collection staff can make an informed decision on how best to proceed to protect our client's best interest. Some of the advantages of using a professional agency like ours is, well, we're specialists in what we do. Additionally, our only interest is to recover payment for our client in a timely manner. Our fees are based solely on results, not on time spent on prolonged negotiations or not on how much money we've spent on PIs and lawyers to make the debtor company come to the table. We're paid on results, a percentage of what we collect for a client. Many debtors will pay a collection agency immediately or agree readily to a short-term repayment schedule in order to preserve their reputation. Additionally, collection agencies that act as independent third parties can affect collection with minimum damage to goodwill, which increases the client's chances of retaining the customer. Okay, because we all know when a debtor company is not paying a client, they're buying from somebody else. Not only do they owe that client the money, but now they're getting their product or service elsewhere. So who would not want to get paid by this guy and have him come back as a customer? Now, should our negotiations reach an impasse, we can always recommend suit, and of course we have our lawyers in the debtors area who specialize in creditors' rights, and they can file suit and seize assets as a last resort in collections. And for those of you guys that are just coming in, we actually only recommend suit on less than 1% of the files we handle. That means the rest of them we are able to bring to some sort of resolution, or at least know what the real situation is, whether it's suit worthy or not, and if it is, it's been paid if we haven't recommended suit, and that way we're not going after things that will prove to be fruitless. It's also important that you understand how credit departments work. Sometimes, actually I say sometimes, but more than sometimes, you will need to discuss matters of credit with clients, and you will need to educate them on things that they may be missing. Now, this is something you pick up over time, but it's something you want to start learning about now. I'm a firm believer in there's no time like the present. This will also help you create additional value in your services when you're impressing upon a client the importance of hiring a knowledgeable agency. Okay, now, for our purposes, credit is the power to obtain money, materials, or services by promising to pay for them at some definite time in the future. Commercial credit involves the sale of goods or services by the supplier who extends credit to a business, usually a manufacturer, a wholesaler, sometimes even a retailer. It is immaterial whether the buyer is a corporation, sole proprietorship, LLC, partnership, whatever, as long as the sale is not meant for personal consumption of the purchaser. In all credit transactions, there are two important elements. The first is future payment. Money, goods, or services that are exchanged for promise of payment at some future date. The second element is that of confidence. This is the extender of credit. The credit extender has to have confidence that on an overall basis, if their credit policy has been a sound and good judgment in evaluating that customer's credit risk, then the customer will be in the position to pay when remittance is due. Now, credit, when properly extended, provides reasonable people with a supplement to their own capital through monies, goods, and services, which they can put to use in creating further wealth. The basic consideration is to determine who is worthy of credit. We will evaluate several tests to be used in establishing sound credit evaluation and policy. Understanding a potential client's credit policy can be a valuable aid in your success in landing them as a client. When possible, posing questions to determine several factors and categories in which a client may fall can lead them to ultimate success and placement of business. Credit is a vital medium of exchange. Matter of fact, it had its greatest application in the constantly expanding economic life of democratic America. The Pilgrims who founded the second permanent English settlement in this country financed their crossing by a 7-year loan from the London Company. They also became the first credit problem in the country. Full repayment of that loan was not made until 25 years later. And looking at some credit history stuff going way back, before the Civil War, selling terms generally range from 6 to 12 months. The Civil War provided the impetus for introducing modern credit terms. Inflation, also coupled with a seller's market, reduced selling terms considerably from the 6 to 12 month term down to the 30 to 60 day term. In addition, strong emphasis was placed on developing discounts to encourage more rapid payment. Now, commercial credit terms have varied with economic conditions and industries since the Civil War. However, they've remained relatively short, usually 30 to 60 days, often with discounts for payment within 10 to 30 days. Probably the largest single factor in shortening credit terms for commercial credit was the rapid improvement that we have been experiencing in transportation and communication. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about the criteria of a sound credit policy. Practically all business-to-business transactions are conducted on a credit basis. With this fact in mind, the need for a sound credit policy and a well-organized credit department is obvious. While there will be little argument as to the importance of the credit department, there will be some difficulty in measuring the efficiency with which the credit department is doing its work. Offhand, it would appear to be a relatively simple task to measure the effectiveness of the credit department. The risk in doing business on a credit basis is that of the customer may not pay when due, or possibly not at all. That is the credit risk in a nutshell. The company's own working funds can be tied up in slow receivables, or a company may sustain bad debt losses in being unable to collect from its accounts. To the beginner in this, it might seem that the best credit manager is the one that reduces credit losses to a minimum and has the smallest number of accounts receivable overdue. This is something that appears to be a credit manager's dream and could readily be accomplished by selling on a credit basis only to the best established, financially strongest customers in their industry. The company's sales, however, will have to be reduced considerably by such a policy. Therefore, the largest single factor affecting the earnings of a typical business is the volume of sales. Its credit policy, therefore, would have to be adjusted to help increase volume. This means adopting more liberal standards and assuming more credit risk for companies. The objective or policy of the credit department might be stated as keeping credit losses and slow collections at a minimum, consistent with maintaining a company volume at a level which assures will maximize income. Now, the factors that influence credit policies will not only depend on credit policy and sales policy, but it varies widely according to the company's financial position. A company's credit policy will usually fall into three very broad categories, which are normal, liberal, or restrictive. And this is normally influenced by internal and external factors. Now, your factors that result in your normal credit policy are a financially satisfactory company that has inventory that is in proportion to their overall investment. Additionally, their product is priced competitively with a reasonable profit margin. Also, their expectation of average future business progress is there. It's sound. With this type of company, a change of policy may be justified, and they may assume a greater risk in credit extension, of course, with proper planning, when the results to be obtained outweigh the increased possibility of bad debt loss. For example, their expectation of average future business progress becomes more than an expectation. It actually happens. Then they can justify a greater risk. When you have companies with a liberal credit policy, the major conditions that will lead to the adoption of a more liberal credit policy would be your company's cash position. If your company's cash position is low and sizable liabilities are falling due within 60 to 90 days, they need to move more product, thus creating a more liberal credit policy. Or if the company's inventory is abnormally large, okay, or if the market for the company's product is declining, okay, they have to find new ways to invite customers in, so they have to be a little more liberal. Or if the company's endeavoring to create a market for new products. Another reason would be if their gross profit on each item sold is large, then a credit risk is not as much of a risk. Or when technical advances or new inventories threaten to make its product obsolete, they have to move that stuff. For example, if you have a company that sells computers and they have more of an inventory than they can sell on their current terms, they need to liberate their credit policy or they're going to be stuck with obsolete product. Additionally, when some of your companies are seasonal, and when they are reaching the end of its principal selling season, they need to move product. Got to get the product up. When a company's selling in a relatively new industry and they desire to attract customers in that field, they have to be a little more liberal. Or if a company's operating in a highly competitive industry, that can also make it necessary to extend a liberal credit policy to obtain more customers. Now, when you run into companies that have restrictive credit policies, the factors that will influence this type of policy might be a company's financial conditions might be so extended that above average credit hazards cannot be assumed. This will necessitate selling to only the largest and strongest customers. Or if they have a shortage in raw materials that are restricting their buildup of inventory, they can tighten up the credit. Or if the demand for their product is substantial, but where its present facility is unable to fulfill orders, except over a long period of time. I know you guys have seen products before that are on back order. You'll get it eventually. These are the types of companies that should restrict their credit policy a little bit. That can improve their earnings. Or if a company's selling on a low gross margin, or when their earnings depend on a rapid turnover, then their policy needs to be more restrictive. Or when general economic conditions are unfavorable, or if the company produces a product directly from a customer's specification, if they have a custom product, or if it involves extensive design, talent, preparation, tooling, things like this, they have to be very careful who they extend credit to, because sometimes these products require a lengthy manufacturing cycle. Additionally, it may cause the company to produce expensive machinery, or they may have to have permanent plant equipment, to make different types of custom manufactured products. Knowing the policies of your prospects and clients can be the first step in determining whether or not this prospect can be a good source of business for you. Credit decisions sometimes are based on extraneous conditions, sometimes local, regional, national. However, the same three factors are normally considered in a proper credit decision, which are character, capacity, and capital, which, of course, the character is the principal factor for determining credit extension in many companies who sell to small businesses or small retailers. Since security is almost never required in commercial credit transactions, and by security I mean, by filing a UCC-1. Like, for example, when you guys have financed your vehicle or financed your home, the bank that lent the money to you to purchase that home or that vehicle, whatever property it is, has a security interest through the form of a UCC-1, which basically states that, hey, you don't pay, we're taking it back. The point is that in this situation, a promise is no better than the person who makes it, because in most commercial transactions, you're not going to have a UCC loan. So it's what's considered an unsecured debt. Second, the capacity of a business to pay is determined by the business ability of the owner or management. This is revealed by the performance of a business. If records show steady growth and profits with all accounts paid when due, the manager or the owner must be assumed to have a good business ability and a good capacity to pay. In essence, capacity answers the question, can the business pay? Which, of course, brings you to capital, which will supply the answer to how much the business can pay. Capital is the investment available to produce profits. Capital as an element in determining credit risk is the financial condition of the applicant, not just the balance sheet net worth. In a corporation, capital is limited to the actual corporate assets, which include the investment of the stockholders. In unincorporated businesses, capital includes the personal property of the owner. The next thing in credit you want to pay attention to is sales relations to a credit department. Your sales departments and your credit departments in companies typically have to work together, meaning a close relationship should always exist between the credit and the sales department. However, it's not uncommon for there to be a conflict between a sales department and a credit department. Each one of these departments play a contributing part in the building of the company's net income. So ideally, the sales department in a company should fully realize that a sale is not a sale until the money is collected, and ideally the credit department should realize that despite the finest credit standing in the world, an account is worthless if the sales department cannot sell enough to that account to make the relationship profitable. To that extent, sales and credit departments need to cooperate closely. Their objectives are identical: to expand sales, reduce credit losses, and increase company earnings. Now, a credit department can aid a sales department in many ways. Their knowledge of a customer's finances can be used to concentrate sales efforts on those which represent attractive credit risks, and of course to avoid those companies which might become a source of bad debt losses. Frequently, the credit department's knowledge of the customer's specific industry can be beneficial to the sales department in suggesting when and in what territories to apply sales efforts. And last but not least on this, the credit department's tact and understanding in collecting can be of considerable use in maintaining a friendly customer relationship. Now, naturally, cooperation is not all one way. The sales department can be a primary source of information to the credit department. The sales representative frequently may visit the customer's plant or business office and can provide the credit manager with useful information such as the extent of their customer's facility, and any recent important changes and conditions of a customer's inventory, and lastly, an opinion as to the honesty and capability of the customer's management. These are things that sales departments and credit departments in our clients' companies can help them work together. Now, companies selling on open account terms, in order to facilitate the flow of commerce, all states recognize the audit facility of an open account in place of a promissory note or other credit instrument, such as a credit application. The statute of limitations is going to vary from state to state. In some cases, the clients have up to 10 years to collect. In some states, they have up to 3 years to collect. Typically, we want to write business that is under 1 year old. The way a commercial account is established, when one company, the seller, extends credit to another, the buyer, either through the sale of merchandise or by rendering services, payment is expected at a future date. When goods are transferred or sold, a bill or an invoice is prepared, and the record of this transaction is entered into the books of both the selling and buying companies as accounts receivable for the selling company and accounts payable for the buying company. This is the evidence of debt. The seller's evidence is, of course, receipt from the purchaser or from the carrier delivering the merchandise. In some of the situations we're selling our services in here, where we're looking at many transportation carriers, which in each transportation instance, when a carrier is hired to deliver a product from point A to point B, there is a bill of lading. Okay, now a bill of lading is not an instrument of credit. It is a document of title to goods, though, and it's used by the common carrier or transportation agency, railroad, truck, air carrier. It's used for a threefold purpose. One, receipt of the goods, the contract to deliver the goods, and document of title of the delivered goods. There are two types of bills of lading. The first is a straight bill of lading. Your straight bill is going to show the control of the goods covered as they're transferred to the purchaser. It's not a negotiable bill of lading. Typically, this document is of a shipment that's consigned directly to a consignee. Your consignee is the company that's received the goods, and only that consignee can take possession of the shipment when it's delivered at its destination. The second type of bill of lading is an order bill, where control remains with the seller until the purchaser receives the bill of lading properly endorsed over to him. The order bill of lading may be made out by the consignor, which is the seller, or shipper to the order of himself or his agent, maybe another third party, and would require the endorsement to transfer control to the purchaser of the goods. Most of the understanding that needs to take place in bills of lading is going to be by our collection staff, which you guys in sales, you want to have a basic understanding of it, but it's not completely important that you understand all of the intricacies and titles involved in a bill of lading. You just want a basic understanding. Do I have any questions thus far from anyone?
I was wondering, you said that we've only had, the company has only had to do 1% in collecting, having to go to court to collect the money, and I was wondering, 1% out of what, like how many cases?
1% in all of the collection accounts we handle. Less than 1% are recommended for litigation.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, less than 1 out of 100 accounts.
Okay.
Obviously, we've handled a enormous amount more than 100 accounts here, but
can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Out of the 1%, to determine the ones that you do go to court with in litigation, basically is if it's worth the money or not, correct? So there are some that you just drop because it's not worth it. Is that true or not?
Exactly.
Okay.
If through our investigations we do not determine that there are sufficient assets for legal proceedings, we do not recommend suit on that.
Right. I mean, you can't squeeze blood out of a turnip. I mean, if a guy's bankrupt and he ain't got any money, I mean, what's the point? You take his house, but that might take years.
Yeah. And in a lot of cases, we're not going to be able to take someone's property because we do business to business. Most companies are protected under corporate statutes. Either
well, if they're an S corp, then yeah, they're protected. But I mean, if it's somebody that's not incorporated that does have personal property, there's, I guess all that's kind of a legality.
Yeah, it is, and we've had situations where we've had to chase down personal guarantors or sole proprietors, and sometimes it's worth it, sometimes it's not. It depends on if they have assets. And also, when we look at assets, we need to look at assets whether they are seizable assets or not, because not all assets are going to be seizable. For example, if we have a sole proprietor and we're going after personal assets, unless that property is owned outright, chances are there's no recourse, because
well, there's certain state laws that prohibit you from going after certain assets to an individual. I think. I think it.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. They're called homestead exemptions.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you this one other question. Say if we went after somebody and he said he was going to file bankruptcy and he had insurance. Is there any recourse to go after any insurance to satisfy a debt?
It depends on what type of insurance it is.
Right. Okay.
If it's a surety, for example, like a bond.
Yeah, I've purchased surety bonds before, so yeah.
Then absolutely, we will go after the bond.
So if it's a bonded company, then we've got some recourse because we know they're insured if they're bonded, right?
It depends on what they're bonded for. If it's a bond that covers specifically what the client is providing them, then yes, absolutely, we can go after it.
Okay.
In some cases, this works. In some cases, it doesn't.
What about mechanics liens? Have you ever had any? Have you had any success with that? Because that's something I've used in the past.
Mechanics liens only collect from a debtor that's willing to pay it.
Really?
Really.
Huh.
In your experience with mechanics liens, did it ever collect from somebody who was unwilling to pay you?
Well, there was some dispute over specifics like equipment and amount, but the reason we filed the lien is because we sold equipment that was installed on this property, and then they refused to pay or did not pay or late paid or whatever. So our recourse was to file a mechanics lien to put a blemish on the title of the property until it was satisfied.
Right. Did you get paid?
Yeah.
How long did it take?
Oh, about 6 months. We had to work out payments and all that stuff, but we finally agreed on an amount that was less than what he owed, but it was better than nothing. So.
Yeah, absolutely. In some instances, your lien will put enough pressure on a company to pay you. For example, if they're looking to take any of the equity out of that property and use it as capital,
right,
then they can't do that without satisfying the lien.
Right.
I deal with a lot of clients that lien every job, and typically a lien only collects a debt if that company is looking to get something out of the equity on that property.
Right.
Or of course, if it's a lien, for example, if you've got a UCC1 on a piece of equipment that you've sold them, and I've actually personally done these types of executions before. For example, I had a local OBGYN that did not want to pay for an ultrasound machine that was leased by a client we were representing,
Right.
and well, we had a UCC1 on it, so I filed a notice with the sheriff's office and put the equipment in the back of my Range Rover. I said, "Sorry about your luck, we're taking it. You want to play games? How are you going to do your ultrasounds now, dummy?"
That's funny.
And yeah, and in some situations they are very useful. But the fact is, if you're going after a client and they're saying we lien everything, well, good. It's a good thing that you lien everything. You're giving yourself a legal right if that person wants to do anything with the property. Otherwise, you may be sitting and waiting a very long time to get paid.
And even if you lien, that doesn't mean you're the first to get paid, because there may be other liens on the property from other people who haven't gotten paid. So it kind of goes in line, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And if the property gets foreclosed on, you're SOL.
Yep.
And I've actually seen some situations where a property will get transferred without a lien being satisfied.
Really? They satisfy a property without a clean title?
I've seen it happen on more than one occasion.
Wow.
Matter of fact, I have accounts here that have these specific situations, and I'm guessing in some places it's just like getting a ticket fixed.
Huh. Well.
Yeah, and it happens, you know.
Yeah.
Now, it's definitely less than legal, and it doesn't happen a lot, but it's something that happens. And you know, if you have a prospect that wants to sit on a lien and wait for it to get paid, well, then by all means, they have that right if they want to sit and wait for their money. But the fact of the matter is, the way property values fluctuate, if that debtor is upside down on their purchase of that property and they end up in a situation where that property is foreclosed on, the client doesn't get a dime.
Yeah. I had one other question. I can't think of it. I'll think of it tomorrow.
All right, well, if you think of it, let me know. Whatever it is, I have an answer for it, I promise you.
I believe that.
A couple other things in getting to know our clients is going to be in the extension of credit in a commercial credit environment, and understanding collections in a commercial credit environment. The skills that are needed to research and approve credit extensions, they're not necessarily the same as those that are required to collect accounts receivable. So the actual person designated to approve credit can vary greatly according to the size of the company. Keep in mind that a credit department or someone designated to approve credit exists to assist a company's sales efforts, for example, to generate new and additional business. In larger companies, they will have professional corporate credit managers, controllers, CFOs, and most of these guys are going to be responsible for making some part of the credit decisions. In medium and small companies, the individual responsible for approving credit may have very little understanding of the credit extension process to businesses. The skills used to research and approve credit are not the same as those required to collect accounts receivable, and in a lot of companies, you're going to have your credit manager controlling your accounts receivable and collection department as well. A serious obstacle to the company's growth and sales may occur when those making the credit decision lose sight of their primary objective, which is granting credit to qualified buyers. What causes them sometimes to lose this sight is a secondary objective, collecting accounts, usually because of time constraints. Attention to past due accounts in the 60 to 90-day category is overlooked. Counseling and working with those in this category represents an opportunity to avoid becoming caught in the vicious spiral. Frequently, the more the credit department concentrates on seriously past due accounts, the more its good accounts in the 30 and 60-day category slip into that seriously past due category, your 90, your 120. And when this happens, the company gets caught in this vicious spiral, and, well, we know what happens there. At this stage, the credit manager or collection manager is faced with a difficult decision. Should he increase the staff? Should professional collectors be hired? Yes, of course. Should credit to the customer be cut off? And, you know, last, should the debts be written off? You know, these are decisions that credit manager has to make. To the uninformed, the thought of placing the seriously overdue accounts with a professional agency may not even come into play. Worse yet, many won't even consider turning over the accounts until they're somewhere between 120 and 180 days past due. Some of them wait till the accounts are more than a year old. So we need to consider statistics, which the ones I'm going to give you are according to the U.S. Department of Commerce. Okay? An account that is 90 days past due is worth about 80 cents on the dollar. An account that is 180 days past due is only worth approximately 50 cents on the dollar. When an account reaches the 1 year mark, 25 cents, baby, 25 cents on a dollar. An account 2 years old, it's typically worth zero. I've seen figures that say 12%. I've seen figures that say zero. But bad debts under, for example, the tax laws of the United States can only be written off as an expense by the seller if they can demonstrate that every effort has been made to make the collection. Usually this is done through hiring an agency or a lawyer. And, of course, a 2-year-old account is worth zero on your taxes. Zero. Nothing. One of the things we talked about previously was what bad debt costs a company in new sales. And I'm going to point out that even the companies with a nice 10% net profit margin, and that's a sweet profit margin, if they have $50K in uncollected receivables, they need $500,000 in new sales to offset that loss. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. If they make 10% off of their sales, 10% net profit, okay, I'm not talking about the EBITDA, I'm talking about the net. 50K is 10% of $500,000. Therefore, if they have 50K that they can't collect, time to sell another $500,000 just to offset that loss. Now, what we want to also understand is factors that influence delinquent accounts. Ideally, before extending credit, a business will obtain a complete credit application, and if any of you are talking to a prospect who does not use credit applications or does not have a concise credit application, send them a copy of the sample credit app that we have in our sales documents. That's what that's for, to give your client a takeaway, to educate them in performing a thorough credit investigation. That starts with the credit app. When they perform a credit investigation, it should include how the credit applicant pays other suppliers, how he's paying rent or mortgage payments on the property that the business facility is in, whether they own or lease the equipment, what's the total volume of sales, and of course, ideally, the applicant's bank is contacted for financial information. Depending on the anticipated line of credit, the applicant may be asked to supply an up-to-date financial statement. Additionally, a D&B report is sometimes obtained, and sometimes, depending on the length of the credit extension, an outside investigation of the business will be conducted. Although on marginal risks, a personal guarantee may also be obtained. This, of course, is the ideal situation when the information is gathered and carefully analyzed to determine the character, capacity, and the capital of a company. However, I live in a place called the real world, where the credit manager or the person responsible for granting credit is under a great deal of pressure from the sales department as well as upper management to approve as many credit sales as possible. The perception is that any delays in making the credit decision will let the buyer slip away to the competition. Too often, the credit application is completed by a salesperson that is obviously more interested in making the sale and is thus reluctant to ask the hard questions about the customer's current financial position for fear of losing the sale. As a result, the credit manager or the credit department may begin with substandard information when they make their ultimate decision. To add insult to injury, the actual investigation may be on a hit-and-miss basis by someone inadequately trained versus one skilled in the art of questioning. Frequently, the decision is made only by a D&B report, and guys, look up the news on your different business reports that clients use. I'm not going to slam anybody who's in this business, but I'm going to encourage you to maybe look some of this stuff up and see how much things like this are used in credit decisions these days, because where the decision should be made is on an actual credit investigation, which is started with a proper credit application. To compound error, once credit's been extended, in most instances, little investigation is done on reorders. In these cases, a buyer may continue to buy and receive higher and higher credit extensions while nothing is being done to sustain the amounts. And when the buyer becomes overextended and is unable to pay, an ill-trained credit department is left wondering, what happened? Why did this fantastic credit risk go sour? Well, it's because you kept extending more and more credit without getting any additional information. Figure it out. Other factors that influence delinquent receivables may be through the reliance on a trade association credit department or a special line credit agency where credit managers might exchange ledger information with other suppliers. And of course, whether the credit manager operates in the ideal world or in the real world of credit, there are many credit managers or departments that are responsible for extending credit that don't have a real understanding of the intricacies of credit. So one of the points in this is whether the company is small, medium, large in terms of volume of sales or employees. If they sell on credit, they will at one time or another have customers who become delinquent. All of them will have some system to handle past due accounts, but all of them are also going to need a third party to assist in handling the accounts that have become dead to them. Your delinquent accounts can be separated into two categories: those that are unable to pay and those that are unwilling to pay. Unfortunately, not all those charged with the responsibility for collecting receivables can make that distinction. Frequently, internal as well as external factors will come into play, such as the credit manager or other person designated for collecting receivables has a number of other duties. How many times have you talked to a credit manager that said, "Oh my God, I'm so swamped, I just don't have time"? In this environment, we can lose sight of the primary goal of retention of customers for future sales. Most companies who extend credit have some system for tracking past due accounts. Additionally, when an account becomes past due, a second invoice may be sent indicating the account is past due, and it's normally followed by a series of letters and sometimes phone calls. Most of the time, these aren't personally drafted letters. At some point, your potential client's efforts will be exhausted. Okay? And in your situations where they have someone in-house actually phoning the debtor company, the attitude taken usually changes, and that customer who was once current now becomes a debtor. Frequently, the person designated to make the initial collection call is not a skilled collector. If the account is seriously past due, the person responsible for accounts receivable may personally phone the debtor. In certain instances, especially in smaller companies, the owner or the president of the company may even contact the debtor. Since new sales and retention of customers is a driving force in most businesses, the person calling is usually more concerned with rehabilitating the account than looking for any underlying problems. The failure to fully explore the current circumstances or the inability to distinguish between those customers who are unable to pay and those who are unwilling to pay could ultimately compromise a company's ability to fully recover that loss. The company may have serious underlying problems which could foretell its ultimate failure, but frequently the account is rehabilitated, once again becomes a customer. The company sells to the customer again and perhaps even extends a credit line again. Depending on the company's financial position, what we talked about before in their credit policies, whether it's normal, liberal, or restricted, this glossing over of a potential problem could have a material effect on the bottom line of a company. Typically, if a debtor fails to pay, there are several actions a company can take. And these are actions that affect future sales. They may put the customer on credit hold. This is something that's used when an account has been paid beyond terms more than once, which is generally an indication of financial problems. A customer is put on credit hold. Each order is usually reviewed, and an individual determination is made on each order whether or not to sell more products. Another thing is check up front. This is an action taken where an account is viewed as important to the company or not viewed necessarily as a major risk. In these cases, the company is just asking for a check up front, and in many instances agreeing to hold that check until a future date, which brings us to cash in advance or cash on delivery, COD. Many companies want to avoid this type of customer, the COD customer, because they usually don't stay with any one supplier for a great length of time. They're always hunting for someone to extend credit terms. And if COD is an accepted form of payment, in most instances it's a company check versus cash. Also, when companies sell on COD, sometimes they have return checks, NSF COD, and we can obtain these accounts for collection. The last thing they do is ship nothing. That's self-explanatory, and that's used for accounts that are pending bankruptcy. They've refused to pay, or they're currently being handled by a third party. For example, us. Now, for a company to keep track of their delinquent accounts, most companies maintain some form of an aging report. Usually, they categorize past due accounts by length of time. The balance on the account has been outstanding for, and it says 30, 60, 90, 120, etc. since the day of the invoice. Sometimes these lists are a printout that's highly sophisticated and very informational, or sometimes it's just a basic agent. But the purpose of it, of course, is to trace past due accounts. So when you're talking to prospects, one of the things you want them to do is look at their aging. As an account ages, the debtor company should be continually contacted by the company that extended the credit, and they should make a determination whether or not that account needs to be placed with a third party, us. Sometimes promises to pay have been broken, mail may have been returned, the debtor begins to ignore calls, or they become elusive, and if the collectors of the company are sophisticated enough, they know how to deal with these various situations. Most cases, they do not, and the account continues to age, and it becomes more difficult to collect. A lot of companies who have a local market or a market that's regionalized may want to turn to their attorney before considering a collection agency. Well, in many cases, this is not the best business decision for them. And of course, we want to try to procure those accounts from that potential client. normally something like that's done around 180 days. If it's turned over to an attorney, the attorney will send a letter, then attempt to obtain judgment. In many instances, the judgment is of no value because the attorney might not even know how to find assets. Most of the time, your attorney's job is to get the judgment, to go to court, whether there are assets in which to execute the judgment or not. And then the client's left with the bill for the attorney and a judgment, which is a piece of paper that's, well, worth about as much as a roll of toilet paper in your bathroom. And you know where I'm going with that one. Also, legal action diminishes any potential rehabilitation of a customer. You know, and that's not even looking at the high cost of collecting the account through that method and the time involved. Okay, judgments take forever to get. In many cases, the alternative should be the less expensive and faster process, which is placing the account with a collection agency, or more specifically, placing the account with Lyons and Associates. Now, when these accounts should be turned over is when the account is 90 to 120 days. When inquiries show that the debtor has had financial reverses due to whatever problems he's having, whether it's failing sales or if, you know, other collection efforts have been initiated by other vendors. Another red flag to look at is when the debtor company has demonstrated bad faith by breaking promises to pay, or when the company's personnel's efforts to collect the account do not justify the time investment. It would be a good idea to realize that it's unreasonable to expect that most credit managers will place an account at an early stage of delinquency if you do not educate them to do so. What should be emphasized in all cases is that the account should be placed when the internal measures have been exhausted, which means when it reaches 90 days or 120 days, or when there are red flags, you know, when their debtor or their customers not returning calls, ignoring emails, ignoring letters. These are red flags that your clients or prospects need to pay attention to, and they need to realize the difference between a debtor and a customer, because a debtor is not a customer. Customers pay on time. Okay? Sometimes the client can find out if it's a debtor or a customer by asking their delinquent company's owner to sign a personal guarantee. See if he'll sign a PG for you. That'll tell you where his faith is in whether you get paid or not. Because if he's not planning on paying, he's going to say, oh, well, I'm not going to personally obligate myself to the company's debts. Of course he's going to say that, because he's not going to pay you. Another way is by sending out a final demand. This can help a client realize the distinction between a debtor and a customer. A refusal to sign a personal guarantee or a failure to respond to a final demand That's leverage to get your clients to place the accounts with you. Okay? Some of the signs that we can educate our clients to look out for that a customer has become a debtor: they're avoiding contact, a sudden dispute over terms or disputing invoices, now that it's past due. Of course, obvious things like writing a bad check, or purchasing from the client's competitors with their money. And some of you know what I mean by that. Some are saying, well, how did they buy with the client's money? By not paying the client, they are using the client as their bank. And they're using that money that's rightfully due to their client to buy from a competitor. Some of the things that are obvious is if the customer's threatening bankruptcy, or they're on credit hold, or of course, the owner refusing to sign a PG, or outright lying to the client. These are obvious things. Some of the other things are, if they're over 120 days on the aging, place them for collections. Okay, this guy's not going to come to the table. He's already breaking promises. Other things, ignoring a final demand, like a 10-day demand, or one of the famous ones, I can't pay you till my customers pay you. I mean, I can't pay you till my customers pay me. If they are claiming that they can't pay until their clients pay them, look, it's time to put them in collections. And guys, if their clients aren't paying them, we can get the money from them, then write them as a client. Okay, so this isn't just an avenue to get that account placed and land that client, but it's potentially another client too. We have some tools here that can help you to identify debts with your clients. Okay, one of the things that you can do to get a client to give you specific information about an account, such as a debtor's name, phone number, or address, is to offer a debtor search to them. Okay, where we can check our databases to see if a debtor is already in collections with either us or anyone in our network. Guys, we have extreme intelligence here as far as risk management. So we can find out if a debtor is in collections. This is an important tool. You can get the client to give you the information, and you can use this information at a later date to secure the accounts by reminding the client of the exact accounts that are a problem for them. If they say, oh, well, I've got a couple that are about 60 days past due. We're not quite ready to place them yet. Oh, well, no problem. I can check back with you on these guys. Why don't you let me check our databases to see if these guys are already in collections? So, if you're dealing with, a customer or a debtor, let me help you identify what you're dealing with. 10-day demands. This is another tool. This is a letter that informs the debtor that if they don't pay in the allotted time, 10 days, they will be placed in collections. This is a free service. Free. It does not cost the client anything to have us send a free 10-day demand to a debtor for them. Now, there is a catch. The catch is, if the debtor does not pay in that 10 days, we're sending our collectors after them. So that is the agreement on a 10-day demand from us. Okay, and the way we do a 10-day demand is we send the 10-day demand via fax to the debtor. That way they get it, one, immediately, two, the client has a fax confirmation that shows them that the debtor actually received the demand letter. Okay, now, there are a few other agencies that give free 10-day demands. A lot of these guys tell them, oh yeah, we mailed it out. Sure you did. Sure you did. You're sitting on it for 10 days until that time expired and you're going after the account. We know what you're doing. You're not fooling anybody. No, we do this with transparency. And the way this works, when we do a 10-day demand, that account is put into our system and status as a 10-day demand. The demand is sent and it is put into the system as an attachment on the file. And what this does, instead of you sending your prospect the fax confirmation, you teach them how to log into our system and get the information. And what you're doing with this is you're getting them to take ownership of our product. You're giving them the test drive. They're taking it for a spin. They're looking at how transparent our system works as opposed to whoever else they're using. Guys, look around at the other online access systems agencies give to their clients. They're not transparent. They give them a status report. We give them everything because we do our job. Therefore, we have nothing to hide. So your 10-day demand is not only a foot in the door to get that account if they don't pay within 10 days, but it's a foot in the door to get that client to take a look at our system and how it can be used to their benefit. Okay, so it's the sale. You know, it's part of the sale. You're getting what you're worth. To go over a couple of the things that I mentioned in the beginning in getting what you're worth, leverage your strengths and your experience. Use your desire to sell, your passion to sell, your energy to sell, your self-motivation, and most importantly, integrity. Integrity is the most important thing in business. Have to be dependable, reliable, respectful, caring about your clients. And remember, the best sales professionals are honest. Guys, we've been on this hangout forever, so I'm opening the floor up for questions. I try to limit these to an hour, but man, I can talk and talk and talk and talk. 22 years in this business, and I still love it. So, guys, talk to me. Tell me what you have for questions. Make me think. I can't hear you, man. You might be muted. Jason? Can't hear you, Jason. Is your microphone on, brother? Well, if if you have questions you need to ask me that don't get answered in this, call me and I'll answer them.
Maybe he can type it in, Mike, his question.
There's an idea. There's an idea. If you want to put it in the chat message, and I'll check it real quick. Google Hangouts is kind of new to me, so I'm still getting acclimated. Acclimated. I can't speak today, man. Somebody took my English away.
We forgive you.
So what's happening, Ryder?
Well, we're going to do some phone calling tomorrow with my group of people. I'm going to have them join me and going to do some extensive phone calling so they can see what I do and how I qualify my prospective clients and see what that does for everybody. Just share some ideas with them, and I got an account that I should secure tomorrow. The one that I had sent a very strong email to, basically to just reaffirm our conversation and ask that I want some placement of some business, and I'm expecting it, and I need her support and being able to obtain these clients because her dad owns the company and is in a partnership, and he was in Las Vegas the other day, so he wasn't present to sign the agreement. So I want the business. I'm hungry.
That's what it's about, brother. It's about getting the business. Question, engage, and qualify, just like it says right here. Wait, let's see, how do I get my... There we go. Question, engage, qualify. Close the deal.
That's right. And the big thing I asked her is, are they tired of continuing being the bank to their debtors, offering interest-free loans? She goes, I haven't thought of it that way. I said, well, that's exactly what you're doing.
And I asked them, who are they buying from now? What does it feel like financing purchases for your competitors? Oh my goodness. Terrible.
So is Jason able to type in his question?
I don't.
Oh, here we go.
Here's a chat message.
Yeah. Jason said he called a friend and he told him that they have a national account with someone and they're tied to their billing system, and they may not. They may be able to move outside of it. I'm not sure yet, but he told me it's really a slick system. Do we do this, or can you tell me about this type of system? There's a lot of variables there.
Yeah. Well, we're not going to be tied in to anyone's billing system. It sounds like they may be having their accounts factored or insured, or it may be just a third-party billing agency, somebody who just strictly does third-party billing for them. We do not do that. We're strictly a collection agency. We don't factor accounts, we don't insure accounts, and we don't do third-party billing for companies. Where we would be able to help these guys is on the ones that these guys are unable to collect. Also, if this third-party billing system that they use, if this company handles the placement of collection accounts for them as well, you may want to find out who that company is and call and pitch them, because they probably need an agency that does better than whatever agency they're using. And we are the answer. Did I answer your question? Or do you have anything else? If you have anything else, type it in there, and I've got an answer, man.
He indicated, Mike, that that was good thoughts, and he'll keep plugging away at it. Thanks.
Awesome. Awesome. All right.
I have a question.
All right, talk to me, Dan.
Yesterday I called a company, and they seem to be not just a local company, but they have extensive companies throughout a lot of states and corporate offices in New York, or sorry, New Jersey. How big of a company do we chase after? Do we do the big corporations?
Nothing is too big. Nothing is too big. I have personal clients that are huge publicly traded companies that do, some of them hundreds of millions in annual sales, some of them billions. So find out whether or not their receivable collections are centralized, or if it's on a location basis. If they're centralized, call the corporate office, pitch who you need to pitch, and see if we can get some accounts from them. Of course, if it's decentralized, if it's not handled specifically out of corporate, it might be regional or something of that sort. You want to pick up the different regions. And of course, the best thing to do is get the first one on board, and once we begin procuring funds for them, then we go in and pitch the next one now that we have a good reference from them.
Yeah, I spoke to the lady who's the local CFO in California, but she'd moved from one site to another, and she pointed me to the corporation in New Jersey, so it seems to be centralized.
Okay. Then talk to Jersey and see if you can get in there.
Okay, shall do.
Well, whatever it is, we can handle it.
Right. I'll get on it.
Awesome. And the bigger your clients are, the bigger your paycheck is.
Yeah. Sounds good.
All right. All right, what else we got?
Mike, just another thought. When we've already spoken to clients and gave them an email with the teaser and the form, how long should we wait without making them feel harassed? Like, should we email them back or call them back? I was thinking of perhaps calling one of the guys back and asking him if he...
I'm not going to put a time frame. I'm not going to put a time frame on when you should call them back. Also, I'm not a big believer in calling somebody back and asking them if they've received our information, and I'll tell you why. What happens when we do that in a lot of cases is we give that person an opportunity to discover their next excuse. What I recommend doing in situations where you're sending out information is qualifying that prospect prior to sending information out. And the purpose of qualification is not necessarily to get the information. It's a psychological thing. You want to find out if that person's actually going to give you the information. Okay, because the point in that is If they're not going to tell you anything about their accounts receivable, they're not going to place any accounts with you. So if you go and qualify, and you can simply do this, and I say, send me some information. Okay, not a problem. I've got quite a bit of information I've got to send. I need you to answer some questions for me so I can send you the correct information. On average, how many accounts do you place on a quarterly basis with collection agencies? What is the average balance of these accounts? Typically, at what aging do you place these accounts? And these are questions to get your potential client engaged. And what that's going to do is tell you whether they're brushing you off or if they're actually interested in the possibility of doing business with you. Now, if they answer these questions, they're interested in the possibility of doing business with you. If they don't answer them, I don't send them anything. And I don't recommend sending them anything because when you call them back, they're not going to come to the phone. In some cases they will, but very few. So it's important to find out when you're going to spend your time sending information and following up. It's important to find out whether they're the real deal or whether it's a brush off. Because a lot of the people you talk to will use that as a brush off. Oh man, awesome! You guys sound fantastic. Can you send me some information? Then you send them out a brochure and you're calling this guy back and you've got in your notes, man, talk to prospect. Bob was so excited about talking to us and getting the information. Then you see your note lines read, left message on machine, left message on machine, left message on machine, left message on machine. You're like, man, what's going on? Why is Bob not taking my calls now? I know he had some business for me. Because now you've been put on ignore. And this can kill your sales cycle. That's why I'm a little more aggressive than what you find in a lot of salespeople, what I call mediocre salespeople. I'm aggressive. I want to talk to the people that want to talk to me. I want to talk to the people that have business and want to place business. I want to talk to the people, essentially, that are going to make me money. That's why I'm in business. That's why I sell. Because I want to make money. I want to provide a fantastic product that's better than one they can get at whoever the alternative is. And I want to build a fantastic relationship with that client through educating them and helping them and providing a fantastic service. And I can only do that if I talk to the right people. So to find those right people, you got to talk to a lot of the wrong people. That's just it's the bottom line. There's no way around it, and it's what has to be done. Now,
Thanks.
no problem. When you're sending information out, are you qualifying these people first, Daniel?
Yeah, I got one the other day, and is quite a hot lead. So I think what I'm going to do is when I call him back, I'm going to ask him if we can help him to see if his debt is in collections, and maybe see if we can get a 10-day demand letter for free. I might try it down that way. What you spoke to in the meeting, offer the free service, 10-day free service.
Okay. And one thing you may want to ask him, since you've identified the need, one thing you want to do is when you're setting your callbacks and you've qualified and you've spoken to your prospect about specifics on accounts. You know, I've got 20 accounts over 120 days. Well, good. I'll send you the brochure. I'll call you back tomorrow. You're going to have those accounts ready to place with me tomorrow? Or when's the best time tomorrow to call you back for those placements? Or instead of calling them back, is there anything stopping you from placing these accounts with me right now? And you want to be careful to word that just as I did. You don't want to ask them what's stopping you. You want to ask them, is there anything stopping you? Because you force them to reason. Okay? Is there anything stopping you is, of course, a yes or no question. And they can say, well, yeah, there's something stopping me. I don't have time. Okay, if you don't have time to place 20 accounts, use the concession clause on, man. Use the concession clause. Give me 10 of them right now, then. Give me 10 of them right now, and I'll get the other 10 from you in a couple of days.
Yeah. The only problem with this guy, he was driving.
What's that?
The only problem with this guy, he didn't have anything stopping. He had something stopping him, which was he was driving.
Okay.
That was the only point. So I will call him.
Yeah, call him back. Tell him we got his money.
There you go.
We have his money. He just needs to place the accounts with us so we can get it for him. That's all.
If he is driving again, I'll ask him if it's safe to pull over.
That's what I would do. Pull over and talk to me.
Yeah, well, man.
I've done that many times on client calls and collection calls. Well, especially on collection calls. If I had somebody call me on a collection issue, I'm like, man, look, pull over.
Pull over for 5 minutes, and we'll help you get $20,000 back.
Right, exactly. And the question in that is, do you want your money? It's your money. Do you want it? I've seen plenty of commercials on TV telling it's your money. Get it now. So that there must be some kind of need for people getting their money. Jason, I think your microphone's working, man.
Yeah. Yes. No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Check. 1, 2. Check. Check. Oh, good deal. I was trying to play around with these settings to get that microphone to work. I hope it's working. If not, I'll keep working on it. But I just wanted to say, after 2 days of calls, I'm really enthused. I'm getting some people to listen. I'm starting to get more comfortable applying pressure on them, asking the right questions. And, I'm looking forward to finishing out the rest of the day. I've got a couple walkthroughs this week, Wednesday and potentially Thursday and Friday. Got a bunch of accounts in my old industry that I want to talk to you and Reiner about how I can get them in the system. So if I'm working for 2 or 3 hours on people I know, that it's showing up to you as production and calling. So
Okay. And you could just click on Add Prospect in the CRM system and put their information in.
Okay. Very good.
It's that simple. Or is it a lot of them? Is it like hundreds of them, or?
No. I'm going to take 20 at a time, and if I get up to hundreds, those aren't people necessarily I know, but just people that I've done business with in the past. I was in that industry for 16 years, so.
Okay. And if if you have something like that, are they on a spreadsheet?
I can do that for you guys if you want.
Well, I was going to say if it's on a spreadsheet, I can upload it
Okay.
right into your system, and it'll go in as leads. And if you don't, if it would be just as easy for you to manually enter them into the system as it would be to put them in a spreadsheet, then just put them in. But if you already have them, that's in a spreadsheet that's got like the contact name, company name, phone number, address, we can upload that stuff right into the system and save you the trouble. But if you have to manually put it in to a spreadsheet, you just as well manually put it into the system.
Okay. Right, exactly. So I'll probably manually enter them, that way I can, you can see what's going on with them, and got to track a few of them down. They sure move around a lot in that business.
Okay. Well, if you need help tracking anybody down, shoot me an email.
Okay.
I have well, in addition to extensive skip tracing skills, I have access to government level intelligence. So,
okay.
Yeah, finding somebody, not a problem at all.
Not an issue.
I have access to some of the same databases that people like the FBI and law enforcement have access to. So, yeah, we've got good intelligence.
It sounds like it.
All right. So, anyone else? All right. Well, I think we're going to close up here. And Jason, just so you know, your mic's working, but there's a little bit of noise on it there. That's
Okay.
it's kind of crackling. It sounds kind of like somebody's drumming on the table or something.
Okay, I'll work on that. I just clicked a few buttons on the audio, and all of a sudden it's working, so I'll hone in on it.
Okay, cool deal, cool deal. And we have these twice a week, every Tuesday and Friday at 11 a.m. Central. I also have, if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, I have past Hangouts that we've done that are on there for you to watch. There's a lot of good information there. And there's maybe 9 other videos because we just started doing them this way. I used to do this stuff by either conference call or by Skype, and I started using the Google Plus Hangouts on Air because it provided an avenue that automatically uploads it to our YouTube channel. Man, that's awesome. So now I've got a sales training and team building channel. That's awesome. I love it. And that way
technology.
Gotta love it, man.
All right, man. Well, it's good seeing you again, and I'm sure I'll be calling.
All right. Well,
We get down and dirty with this stuff.
awesome. Well, I look forward to next time. I look forward to talking to everybody soon, and let's make some money.
All right. Thank you, Mike.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm signing off. You guys have a fantastic Tuesday.
You too, man.